name is Sue Deering, and I'm the president of the Laguna Woods Democratic Club, and I'm so happy to have all of you here tonight to hear our terrific speakers. Recently, the difference between equality and equity was made clear to me. Equality is leaving the door open for anyone who has the means to approach it. Equity is ensuring there is a pathway to the door for anyone who needs it. Recently, one of the members of our African American committee asked me if anyone complained about all the articles in the newsletter about African Americans. And I said no, no one has complained, and it is about equity and not equality. That said, there is always much more that we can do to be aware of Native Americans, African Americans, Asian Americans, all kinds of other groups that we don't know enough about. So if you are willing to write a newsletter article about someone famous that we all should know about but don't know about, then please see me. I also have two contrasting anecdotes to share with you tonight. One is a friend was telling me how discouraged she is about all the recent polls. And I said to her, do you remember what the polls were saying in 2016? They did not get it right then, and there is no guarantee that they are right now. So, a contrasting anecdote. A neighbor told me recently that she and her husband don't necessarily talk about politics because she was a Republican and she became a Democrat after Trump was elected. She said that all her Republican friends are voting for Biden. And she said she's still working on her husband. Okay? So, anyway, these contrasting stories are reminders to us that we have to do more and worry less. What we need to do is talk to friends and neighbors, write postcards, make phone calls, stay informed and hopeful. Let's not let the big, huge Trump flags drown us out, okay? We need to be very proud of who we are and who we're going to vote for. Now I have a personal announcement. When we retired from teaching in 2006, my husband David and I moved to Laguna Woods to be near my mother who had Parkinson's. Some of my other goals for retirement included reading books, watching more movies, learning Spanish, and getting involved in democratic politics. Well, I succeeded at least in the last one. I started by stuffing envelopes for congressional candidate Steve Young, and that was a while ago, that was in 2006. And in 2007, Jonathan Adler asked me and Linda Nearing if we would like to be on the board of the Democratic Club. So we didn't know what we were getting into, and we said yes. Linda started as publicity chair, and I started as special events chair. 2 years later, I became president of the Democratic Club, and then either Linda or I were president and vice president ongoing until Linda's death a few years ago. So that means that I have been either president or vice president for 16 years. That's quite a long time. So, thank you. I have never regretted a single moment of it. It is a challenging, exciting, sometimes frustrating, but very rewarding volunteer position. I have learned so much about democratic politics in Orange County, in the state, about people, and about myself. But now it's time for new leadership, as I intend to step down in January 2025. This is an amazing Democratic club, and we want it to stay that way. So we are looking for candidates who are interested in learning what it takes to lead a Democratic club and to run a Democratic club. So many of you have all the skills and the background necessary. I learned everything through experience. I did not know anything when I started. I came from New York State, so I didn't know anything about California politics or about politics, period. In fact, I could barely work out an Excel spreadsheet. But anyway, I am willing to stay on as an advisor and to attend board meetings and to give my input for institutional history and memory. If you are interested in running for president, being on the board, or just being more involved with the club in general, please see me or nominating chair Pat Freeman, but I don't see Pat here. No, okay. Pat is not here tonight. Anyway, thank you for considering this exciting opportunity. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Jean Lepowski, who is going to introduce our two speakers, Teri Sorey and Billie Jo Wright. Thank you, Jean.
Now I'll go to the main event here. We have two very active people who are active in politics and who are very well informed about educational issues in Orange County, and that's Teri Sorey and Billie Jo Wright. They are both founding members and board members of SOPOC, which stands for Supporters of Public Education, Orange County. They are both elected delegates to CADEM. They are both officers in or have been or are officers in Democratic clubs and DPOC chartered Democratic clubs. They are both or have been teachers. Teri is a retired English teacher. Billie Jo is currently a history teacher. They are both very involved with their students. Teri still does supervision of student teachers for UC Irvine, and Billie Jo is an advisor to high school clubs such as Mock Trial and the Club for Future Politicians and Business Leaders and related clubs. So it is my pleasure to, so they're both very active in making good things happen in Orange County, and I've seen them both in action. And so it is my pleasure to introduce you to Teri Sorey and Billie Jo Wright.
First of all, thank you very much. Laguna Woods Dem Club is famous in the Democratic Party of Orange County for their activism and helping out the other clubs. Our club is new and small, and we're still learning things. So I've already been taking notes about how you run your meetings and things that we can use for our work as well. And I also wanted to mention that both Billie Jo and I are teacher union people. He's current president. I was president of Irvine Teachers Association for 6 years till I retired. And Billie Jo was just elected statewide as a representative on the CTA political PAC. And so statewide, he was elected by all the state delegates. So that's a big achievement. So we're going to be kind of tag teaming here on this as we work together on the slides, and we're hoping you can read them all. And there's nothing up there that we're not going to say, so you won't miss anything. But we're teachers, so we had to make it look like we knew what we were doing.
Good evening, everybody. Oh, come on. Good evening, everybody. It's been too long a week and too long a school year for us not to have energy. So good evening. We got a lot of work ahead of us in 2024. And so being invited here, we really want to thank you. And we are inspired by just seeing the amount of people that are here doing the work. And we're excited to present some of this information to you tonight. So I'm going to be kind of bouncing back and forth with Teri to move the slides. Do you want to go to the next slide there? Or I'll do it here real quick.
Oh, do you want me to do slides?
Okay, so we did a couple things here. One, we put the slides in black for two reasons. One, for accessibility. People often are able to see better when it's a black slide and with white on it. But no matter how much you try, you never know the size of the room or where it's going to be. If it was right here, you'd be like, oh, that's so good. Now it's over there. It might look a little further away. But as Teri said, don't worry, because we're going to read a lot of the stuff that's on the slide. And the other reason that we have it in black is because public education is in a dire state right now. Public education is under attack. Our country, our democracy is under attack. And so as much as we want to have levity with what we're presenting today, which we have some gifs in there and some images that might make you laugh if you can see them, but we also want to make sure that we understand that it's a really sad place that we're at right now. We see people, adults, that are choosing to attack students. And they're doing it for reasons that we're going to explain. But the sad thing is that they say that you can judge a civilized society by how they treat certain groups of people, including our kids. And in some of these school board meetings, we've seen them literally verbally and in some instances physically attack the kids. So now that I've kind of got your attention and depressed you a little bit, let's kind of pick things up a minute, and we want to ask you these two discussion questions for you to talk at your tables for a minute, because we want to center the conversation and the presentation. So one, what is the purpose of public education? So when you hear we're talking about public education, what is the purpose of it? Two, why is public education important to a democracy? Or is it important to a democracy? You might have heard of a movie called Back to the Future. And so we kind of framed our presentation around the idea of back to the future. And the reason is because we're going to take you back in time. What was the purpose of public education? How did it evolve? Why did it evolve? We want to understand those things so that we can then fast forward to where we are today and understand why we're having the attacks that we're having right now in public education and in our democracy. In the presentation, you're also going to see why public education is important to a democracy. And then we're also going to take a national view, bring it down to the state, bring it down to the county of Orange County, and talk about a couple local school boards. So we got a lot to cover. Don't worry, we'll be around for questions afterwards. And then just so that you know, if you see that picture and you're like, is the fire moving? Yes, it is. But I can't see the fire on the picture. Don't worry, because this presentation and all of our sources that this presentation is being put together with are going to be available to all of you on our website later. You'll just be able to go to our website, soapoc.com. You'll click up in the right-hand corner, or .com. Both work, I think.
Oh, did we say
I think so. Both, and then up in the right-hand corner, as you're going to see the SoapOC presentation, you click on there, and everything will be there, including podcasts if you'd like to listen to some of the Project 2025 mandates that we're going to be talking about.
I want to say something real quick. A shout out to Jonathan Adler for helping me when I wrote the resolution for SoapOC for the Democratic Party for the state of California to recognize the importance of public schools. And the quotation, if you can't read it, is from FDR. Democracy cannot succeed unless those who express their choice are prepared to choose wisely. And the real safeguard of democracy, therefore, is education.
All right, now everybody's really ready to go, right? So let's kind of go back in history. And if you look up at the slides there, we purposely left off the dates because we wanted people to try and kind of figure out how far back did this go? So are we starting with history when the United States was founded? Or are we talking about when people first came over from Europe? So let's just look at this. So it says the first thing is before public schools, schooling was haphazard. Many children were excluded based on income, based on race, ethnicity, gender, and geography. Think of those terms there and think about the attacks that we have today. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. The next era of it was the democracy and the origin of public schools. So public schools needed to be preparing people for democratic citizenship. So there was some idea about if we're going to bring people together socially, how do we get them and encourage them to get along, to know each other? And so the federal government starts to look at this idea of we should have some type of public education, a place to bring people together, and then you have that capitalism side so that economically you could start to train your workforce. Let's go on the next one. So they established some common schools, and you'll see that they have, again, to promote cohesion. So they're still trying to bring people together. But who are the kids that are in those schools? So start to think about that. So then we have the spread of public education. You can see where they talk about it's gradual and it's uneven. So rural, inner cities, people who have money. You also start to see where they were building communities of people that could afford to build those communities, and they would start to build their schools around whatever topics that those communities wanted. So when you hear today in California about the billions of dollars that are being spent around community schools, just kind of keep that in your mind. So diversity and immigration. So when we're talking about diversity and immigration, can you see the picture or the GIF at the top? So he's going like this, right? Diversity. Because even though they were trying to be diverse, were they really including everybody at that time? No. So if you look here, it talks about they sought to educate children from different economic groups, religious groups, European ethnic backgrounds, but there were a lot of people that were still being left out. So when, again, you hear the attacks on diversity, or right now DEI, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion, just remember that these are not progressive left-wing terms. Just all the way back then, they were already using these terms. It's just the context that people were using them in. So earlier you heard Sue talk about equity. So now as they bring in and they start to see that if we're going to be having a strong democracy, we need to be empowering more groups. So we start to look at equity. So to give people an opportunity, and I believe Sue used the term like to open the door, right? So that they could get to the door. So they start to look at how are we going to include people? And this really comes up after World War II, because they start to see that there's social needs that the school system is going to have to provide, and that's going to have to educate people so that they can then become the workforce to continue to move the economy forward and grow it. So we get now closer to what we have, a decentralized type of system. So you have the local, state, and federal governments playing a role in education. Now, we still empower mostly the local governments, which is why lately when you hear about these attacks at school boards, people wonder like, well, wait a minute, I thought there were all these protections, but really that's your elected government for your local school area. So people have, I have my friend is president of Chino, and you see everything going on there. And there's things that they're passing that's breaking the laws. But the thing is that local government is still in charge of passing laws or board policies for that group there. And there's not this system set up to really come down and do something, which is why in the state right now we're working with Superintendent Tony Thurman and Attorney General Rob Bonta. But just remember that, because when Teri talks later about Project 2025, anybody familiar with Project 2025? Oh, yes, I know. So what they're doing is they're taking this historical story and they're flipping it. And in Project 2025, they're eventually looking at using everything that was used like through the civil rights era, when we had to do forced integration. they're looking at using all those same tools by getting up to the federal government and then using those tools to undo everything from the local levels. So there's an incomplete agenda right now in education, and we know that. And here's what they're capitalizing off of. Because if you're a part of a marginalized group, or you already feel left out, and you're yelling at Biden saying, well, what about me? I still need this. Or my local school's not this. They're capitalizing off of that because it's our generation's turn right now to do something about it, right? But what they're saying is, no, look how bad public education is. Look how they're focusing on this instead of actually educating your kids. So we know that it's an incomplete agenda. And that's how they're able to get away with what they're doing right now. And a lot of us see people in our own families who say, well, but I don't like our local school. I don't like local school. But they won't take time to get involved all the time. So it's an incomplete agenda.
How many educators are in the room? Oh, that's wonderful. Our profession has changed a lot, and it's not just technology and new learning research, but these attacks that are coming on students are also coming on to teachers. Teachers are afraid to say the wrong thing, afraid to teach a book, afraid to put up a poster, because it just might, depending on where you are, it might just be one kid goes home and complains, and you know, you're in trouble, and you're going to be put on administrative leave or something. It's a very scary time, and it's one of the reasons why a lot of people are leaving the profession, and I think fewer people are interested in pursuing. It's not just the money, it's being afraid. And when I work with student teachers, I advise them wisely about what to say and what not to say, and to reassure them that it's high school, your students have a lot of other teachers, and they have had teachers. It's not all on your shoulders to do all this risky stuff, DEI things. Let it inform your education and your lesson plans, but you don't have to be taking risks right now until you're a member of your union and you have permanent status. Seriously, this is what I talk to student teachers about, because I don't want them to get fired because they decided to teach a book that someone complained about. So what our schools are facing, thank you, what our schools are facing today nationally certainly comes from Project 2025 and the Republican Party platform. And I found an article today that mentioned a few other groups. I posted them on our social media, and you can get those links on our website. A group called Agenda 47. A group called the Seven Mountains Mandate, which is a dominionism, Christian nationalist thing that Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, is a devotee. The Heritage Foundation, they are particularly against public education. Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk. And these are the same people who also want to get rid of Medicare, and they want to get rid of Social Security. It's not just education, that's all we're talking about today, but it's all those other things. These people want the US government to care only about military protection. That's it. They don't want EPA, they don't want labor, they don't want any of these other things. They want to be able to make their profits. It's wannabe oligarchy. So one of the things that they really want to do, and this isn't new, they've wanted to do it for a long time, is to privatize schools because they don't want to pay taxes for them. For the federal government, there's nothing in the Constitution that says anything about education. They do not have to provide education. Most of the state constitutions state it, but I heard this week that Louisiana voted to throw it out of their constitution, and they're going to rewrite their constitution. They already got rid of all their public schools in New Orleans. It's 92% charter schools there now. So, you know, they're working on it. You know, and all it takes is a big disaster. And if you remember the, what was that, shock? What was that? Well, yeah, Katrina, but I mean the book that came out that said, you know, when there's a big, giant, shocking thing, that's when they come in and redo it. Like after 9/11, and the Patriot Act was already written. It was ready to go. It's this thick, and they just needed something really bad to happen, and boom, they implement it because everyone's reeling. So undermining public schools has been going on for a long time as well. They want everyone to think schools are failing, that kids aren't learning, that it's a waste of money. And so when they underfund schools, well, yeah, they're not going to do that well. Higher demands. Right now, in a classroom, nearly all students are mainstreamed, even if they're English learners or they have special needs. And so the teacher has to differentiate for all of them at the same time. And that's a challenge when there are that many kids in the room. You have to have like 20 to be able to do that well. Making schools seem to be failing. Part of that has to do with the standardized testing, which is garbage. You do have the right to opt your children out of state standardized testing. It's in the ed code, and they can't make you jump through hoops to do it. And then making the teachers' unions, these protesters come up with signs that say groomer, and they hold them in the parking lot while the teachers are driving in to the parking lot to school. That's what teachers are being called. We were probably called that in Orange, huh? Because they put us on their thing. Warning parents to withdraw their kids from public schools. Take them out. It's dangerous there. The teachers are groomers. They're bad for your kids. And so now the next thing is the white Christian nationalists. These are the white supremacists and those who want to whitewash the history with their Christian beliefs taught in school. And so they're creating charter schools that are using this kind of curriculum. There's one in Capo that's called a Leadership Academy. There's one in Orange called a Classical Academy. We'll talk about those a little bit more later. And these are all supported by Moms for Liberty and Proud Boys. I mean, they're showing up at school board meetings. It used to be boring. Now they're scary. The unaccredited Hillsdale College, puny little school in Michigan, DeVos Foundation funded. Remember Betsy DeVos, who never saw public school but was, Secretary of Education? They write the curriculum, and if you go to their website, they sell a whole lot of it for homeschool parents. So you can learn that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves after he found Jesus. That the founding fathers were closet abolitionists. I mean, the things that are in there would curl your hair. Teachers are groomers. They are trying to turn kids gay. They're pushing a gay agenda. They're taking students during lunch for transgender surgery. I mean, these are things we actually hear at school board meetings. And then teaching kids to defy and keep secrets from their parents. It's like if we could groom kids, we would groom them to do their homework. And then there are a lot of church connections, locally and overall. Pastors that do ballot harvesting. Just bring in your ballot and sign it, and we'll tell you how to fill it out. We'll fill it out for you. That's happening locally. That's in Orange County. That I know you all worked really hard for Shireen Smith. That was done against her. That affected the outcome of that race when she ran for Orange County Board of Ed. They are leading groups. They come in buses, sometimes from like out of the county even. I've seen them arrive in Orange. And they make demands at school board meetings. They want to ban ethnic studies, ban sexual health ed, ban LGBTQ recognition and rights, ban books, posters, flags, whatever they don't like, ban, and they demand what they call parents' rights. And when we spoke at Canyon Dems, Shireen came with us, and she talked about parents' rights, and she brought a printout of all the documents that parents receive when they enroll their kid in school about this. These are the rules, this is the rights you have, you can do this, you can do that. And I can't think of a time when parents had an easier time of finding out what's going on, because they can all go online in the middle of the night and see, was my kid's attendance, my kid's grades, what are the assignments, what are the due dates? There is nothing that parents can't find out these days. It's a lot easier than it ever was, but they're demanding rights. And they have so many already. And then a big problem, an important part, this isn't a big problem, only when it's abused, but because schools are funded with state tax dollars, there's accountability. And so things have to be public. The California Ed Code, the California Board of Education, there are about 7 different things that govern what teachers do in the classroom in terms of curriculum, funding, all the rest of it. And that's why we have elected school boards. And they are supposed to be overseeing curriculum. They don't choose it. They don't ban it. They're not allowed to do that, but they're supposed to be making sure that the things, that the materials are being evaluated fairly, that they meet state standards, that the teachers are supportive of it. All of these processes, they're making sure it happens. And they also hire and evaluate the superintendent. That's it. They don't get to hire and fire anybody else, just the superintendent. And they're elected, and it's a huge responsibility. I'm from Irvine, and I know that our school district's budget is bigger than that of the city. There are over 3,000 employees in IUSD, and there are over 36,000 children. That's a huge responsibility. We can't just elect people who are going to show up every other Tuesday night and rubber stamp what the superintendent does. There's homework. There's learning and understanding. It's a huge responsibility, and I think the party, for a long time, and probably both parties, have not paid a lot of attention to it because technically it's a nonpartisan race when it's at the end of the ballot after you looked at 35 judges. And a lot of people did not, like when in Shireen's election, a lot of people didn't vote all the way to the end of the ballot. They just stopped. And partly because they didn't know, which is why our job as a party is to make sure our Democrats know which candidates to vote for school board and do it. You know, don't just stop when it gets to be too many judges. That's really important what they do. They also make the budgets public. So you can go to a board meeting and the CFO will present a slideshow and explain where the money's going and what it's for. There are stakeholders that give input into the local accountability plan. Parents, students, teachers, aides, bus drivers, community members, all can weigh in on what they think needs to be done, how the money needs to be spent. And of course, they have to make sure they're following Ed Code, labor law, and all the rest of it. And that's why when Billie Jo mentioned before that there are school boards that are violating Ed Code, they don't care. They're just voting against it, which is why we're working, as he said, with Senator Newman to hold them accountable, because otherwise, if you can have a law, but if nobody's going to enforce it, big whoop, we got to do that. So teachers' contracts, a lot of these things come to be done.
So just real quick, so we went over history, we went over nationally. We kind of brought it down to California to understand how the money works in public education. And then next, Teri's going to be going into talking about charters. And the reason why it's important to understand it in this order is because as you get to know their plan more, a lot of it has to do with defunding a lot of these things. And so how do you defund? It's what you're doing with that money. So she's now going to go over charters and talk about what were charters for, what are good charters, what are bad charters, and then we're going to go down into Orange County.
Okay. One thing that might be worth mentioning is that California schools are funded differently from most in the nation. And it used to be this way in California too, before Serrano v. Priest, that schools were funded by the local property taxes. So if you lived in a community where the houses were very expensive, there was a lot of revenue from the property tax that went into your schools. Now it's opposite. It's opposite, because everybody gets a base funding in California, and then for every ADA, average daily attendance, which we're going to talk about changing that to enrollment, but the more kids you have, the more money you get. And then for every student who is an English learner, English isn't the native language, there's more money. And for any student who's a foster youth or low socioeconomic situation, there are a number of categories, there's money for that. And if 55% of your student body qualifies for that supplemental money, that amount gets doubled, and it's a concentration grant. So this is why Capo, Saddleback, Irvine are the lowest funded school districts in Orange County, and the higher funded districts per pupil would be, Anaheim, Santa Ana, Garden Grove. So it's completely opposite from what people think, and that's a big shift when people learn that. It's very different. So and that will be an important part here with the charter schools. So in the 90s, there was a plan to put vouchers on the ballot. I'm sure that's going to come back too. And a compromise was made. Okay, let's not do the voucher thing, but we will create an opportunity for existing schools to convert into something new and innovative if the staff wants to do that. And so this was something generated in-house, in a site, and they're like, oh, we don't want grade levels anymore. We're gonna group people differently, or we're gonna do project-based learning, or whatever. They're gonna do something new and exciting. And they would get 5 years to do that, and they would be excused from certain expectations and responsibilities to work on this innovation. And then what worked was going to be shared with other schools. Say, look, we did this, we made this happen, and now other schools can do it too. And there would be a maximum of 100 schools in California that would be able to do that. So that's how it started, within the school itself. And so today there are still district charters. So a district charter meets all the same standards as the rest of the school. The teachers and administrators have legal California credentials. The students have access to whatever special needs supports they need, and it's open to all students. We take all comers in public school. And then there was some leeway for innovation, like I described earlier. And sometimes they were designed to serve a particular need, to be like a dual immersion school where the kids are learning 2 languages from the time they're, say, in kindergarten. And I know of one charter that was formed in the Sacramento area that they had a huge influx of immigrants from Cambodia. And so they just turned one of their campuses into a charter just for those families and provide wraparound services for the parents to learn English, and the kids, and all those needs were met. And then after a period of time, they didn't need it anymore, and then they dissolved it, and the kids just went to neighborhood schools, and it was fine. So that's what a charter is meant to be able to do with public funds. What happened was outsiders came in and saw it as a chance to make some money. So in California, the thing that takes the most revenue is school, education. 40% of the budget is for education. And people are thinking, how do we get our hands on that? And so they started creating privately run public charters. And they always call themselves public schools because they have public money. And they could be run by companies and corporations, people with experiments, making stuff up. And we know that over time, this has increased segregation nationally in our schools. It's worse now than it was in 1954, Brown versus Topeka. That's when I was born that year. And the other thing they do is they drain money from public schools, because for every kid that goes to the charter, that that financing from the state goes to the charter and away from the school. And as schools get smaller, programs get cut because you can't keep them, and there's a lot of suffering. They also cherry pick students. They'll take them, anyone at the beginning, because they want the money. But then partway through the year, when they see, oh, this kid's test scores are not going to look good for us, say, oh, it's not a good fit, Mrs. Jones. I think you should put your kid in the public school. And then the public school teachers get these kids coming in right before testing, and they haven't been taught well, and they do poorly, and that reflects on their school. So facilities use, another problem, because they get to take facilities. And sometimes they're sharing facilities at a site, and they have to take turns with the playground, take turns with the library, take turns with the computer lab, and it becomes really nasty sometimes. Parking, driving, because kids are coming in from all over, and the kids who live in that neighborhood who would normally be walking to school, now they have to be driven to some other school. It's like craziness. Definitely created for private gain, because the people running it decide how the salaries are going to be allocated. They aren't unionized teachers. They aren't even necessarily credentialed. So the person who's the charter school manager, and there, you can get an MBA in charter school management at the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. I had a former student ask me for help with that, and know nothing about education. Nothing. Not even Education 101. Nothing. But they would make a lot of money, hire their brother-in-law to do the construction, hire their wife to write the curriculum, and the teachers are getting paid diddly squat. I know too many former charter school teachers to trust very many of them. And a lot of them are created for a political agenda, like those Classical Academy and Leadership Academy, to indoctrinate students with that unaccredited Hillsdale College curriculum. So the process that they go through, they have to fill out a whole thing. They present it to the local district first, and the local district has to approve it by default unless there is a problem with one of 7 very specific things. Like there isn't enough money that would cover what they're saying they're going to do, for example. So if a local district says no, then they get to appeal to the Orange County Board of Ed. And that's filled with people who just go crazy for charters. They never met a charter they didn't like. So, Billie Joe, back at you.
So the next part I'm going to speed up a little bit, but want to separate the Orange County Department of Education from the Orange County Board of Trustees. So the Orange County Board of Education, as you'll see there, does the Department of Education does things like the curriculum, trains teachers, reviews and makes recommendations regarding charter school petitions. Go ahead and go to the next one. And they have their own superintendent that is elected. So the board does not hire like you see in your local school districts. The superintendent is elected, and the superintendent's role there is to create the budgets and hire staff. When you get to see that GIF there, it's a little kid calling him Mr. Super Nintendo instead of superintendent. I just wanted you to know I put that in there. And you want to go ahead and go to the next one? So then we get to the Board of Education. And the Board of Education has powers to approve the superintendent's budget. So the superintendent produces that budget, and they're supposed to be oversight. They also hear appeals regarding student transfers and charters. And so that part right there is why you could see that the charters really play heavy in these elections, because they can literally override anything in a local school district in terms of charters. And we've worked really hard with the Orange County Board of Education. So we've kind of gone national, California, down to Orange. If you follow the Orange County Board of Education, anybody follow anything with the Orange County Board of Education? So we worked about 4 years ago, 5 years ago now, got COVID years, right? To actually redo the map So if you follow the Orange County Board of Education, you know that we looked at the map of how they were getting elected, and it was gerrymandered for them to be able to get elected. They also have it in the primary where less people vote, and so they're being elected by less than 29% of the people that they represent in their area. So I worked with several different organizations for us to put a map together. And so if you read the Orange County Register, you saw that I was out there in what we called Billie Joe Wright's People's Map. And we did get the map passed. We got the map passed, which undoes those gerrymandered maps. They fought it. They spent a lot of money. There was 2 lawsuits. They took it all the way up to the state. We even had to go to the county committee and got it through there, and they sued them as well. That's how much the charters want to hold on to these seats. Now, unfortunately, in this last election, we didn't win those seats, right? We worked really hard. But the problem is that what we're seeing is with the charters being able to come in and just dump money there, it's hard for us to compete with money, and not enough people right now really understand what the County Board of Education does. So we're working really hard. We have the map. We're working to potentially expand the board so that we have a little bit smaller areas that are better to work with. And we're also looking to get that election into the general election so that as people turn out to vote, that will be something else that we'll be able to do.
I got
Go ahead.
breaking news. That's SB 907, and it passed the Senate today, and it's headed to the Assembly. So we're optimistic.
So these people are, if you see this, the GIF up there is really bad. They're bad. And you should hear the stuff that they say on the dais. They literally will attack people with race. They will attack students with their sexuality or their gender. I just know for myself, when I was going through it, I had a really good friend and mentor. I don't know if any of you know Fran Sadow. But Fran turned to me one day after we were there and there was the attacks, and you can look up in the Orange County Register and see the pictures of them shouting. But she said, "Do you want to stop?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, do you feel safe? Does your partner know? Does your family know?" And I had told her, I said, Fran, I really appreciate as a friend that you're saying that. But the statistics are that 1 in 5 kids attempt suicide at being part of the LGBTQ community. And if an adult up there can call them out and say those things to them, who am I to say that I need to protect myself first? So I can't stress enough how important these things are. Because imagine if you're already having issues, dealing with something, just being a kid, and then you have someone basically saying that stuff to you. So the Department of Orange County Board of Education, we're working to flip. Go ahead and go to the next one. The trustees, you can read more about at our site if you want to learn more about how bad they are. Next one. I see the time here, so I'm moving on. You'll see all the different things that they've done. Go on to the next one. There's the money that they've been wasting on a lot of lawsuits. We're talking millions of dollars. They sue just to sue to get publicity. So again, you'll see. I know I'm going through it fast, but I'm seeing the time in front of us. Teri's going to talk quickly about the superintendent. And we have just a couple more slides, and then we'll get through this.
Okay, Dr. Maharis has been a superintendent for a number of years, and he is now facing severe health issues, and we've been waiting for him to come back, and he's officially told us that he's retiring at the end of June. So tomorrow, the Orange County Board of Ed is going to be interviewing 6 potential candidates for the position. One of whom ran against Dr. Maharis and who has done nothing but run charter schools. He's never run real public schools. We expect that that's the person whom they will appoint, despite lack of qualifications. And whoever is appointed then will be an incumbent when that is on the ballot again in 2 years. So we're really feeling really ill about that. But there are plans to mitigate some of the damage. We have to elect qualified board members. You know, Republicans know in California they can't win the governor, they can't win senator, they can't win any of the big prizes in California. But it's really easy to pick off school board because they have the money that we don't have. And it's small and no one pays attention, and that's how they do it. And so they do it a little bit everywhere, and then, you know, they start building and moving up. It's insidious, no doubt about it. So we are preparing the legislation, SB 907, as I mentioned, and that's doing well. It has been proposed twice before by Senator Min and would get cut off at the last minute, so I'm not holding my breath on this until it actually passes and the governor signs it. But we are starting to see right-wing extremism in our local districts now as well. It's spreading. So I've been going to Orange County Board of Ed meetings, I don't even know how many years. That's where I met Billie, Joe, at those meetings, and that's where we would talk and figure out, okay, what are we going to do? We got to organize. And so, you know, we as presidents have sat through school board meetings that are, it's sweet, you know, the spelling bee winner and the band competition and the CIF champions. School board meetings were nice. Some of it was boring, but it was nice. Now it's scary. It's scary. And so that's one of the reasons why we formed SOPOC, so that we could go together, even if we didn't know each other, because we only meet by Zoom, and we would wear purple, and then we would recognize each other and know where to sit. That's how bad it is. And I've gone with friends, and boy, you know, I'm an old white lady, so you know, I could blend in with them, but I have friends who are not, and they're a lot more scared than I am. And so I want to be there and protect them. So we want to be the people who don't applaud for their hateful garbage that they say. We want to be there to support the kids who come up because they won the spelling bee and try to make things normal. So we're resisting, and we're showing that they are not the majority. They think everyone agrees with them because there's no one else there at the board meeting. And so they think they're right, and they won, and everyone agrees. And so SOPOC was formed to say, no, more people agree with us.
So bringing it down to some of the local school districts, again, very quickly, Placentia, Yorba Linda, a lot of people there have just given up. There's a mass exodus of employees, administrators, teachers, students. They feel that there's no one there to fight and resist with them. They have an insurrectionist actually on the board, and he has no problem shouting out things, and you know, they're the ones leading the way in banning books, banning pride flags. Go ahead and go on the next one. Orange Unified. So now let's talk about a win, right? Orange Unified, we just got the recall passed and got kicked out 2 of the trustees and have 2 people in, but now we've got to get them elected because they're going to be there for a few months, and then they have to be reelected in November, and then there's other seats that are up in Orange Unified. But it just shows you how quickly, and the plan when you read Project 2025, how quickly they can come in, and once they have control over a budget, how long it takes to get them out, how much money it costs to get them out, and what they can do to decimate a local school district, and or if they're at the city level, just check Huntington Beach, right? Huntington Beach is a great example financially. If you don't know what's going on in Huntington Beach, definitely look up Huntington Beach. Look at where they were just a few years ago economically with their surplus, and look at the deficit that they're running right now, where they may end up needing state intervention. Saddleback USD we have on the slide, so you will be able to see a little bit of information on there. And the one thing that we want everybody to know is that we're not alone. We're not alone. There are groups that we're working with, California Teachers Association, Planned Parenthood, Equality California, Public Defenders Hub, but we need everybody else. because we need, even if you're just going and taking a seat in the space so that they can't fill the room and clap for the hatred, but we do need more people because we're all doing the most that we can. Go ahead and go to the next one. We talked about why SOAP OC was formed, and we have meetings, Zoom meetings. And the Zoom meetings, we've instituted high security on it, the highest that we can. So we're going to invite you in a little bit to attend our SOAP OC meetings. The next one's Sunday, June 2nd at 7 p.m. But you do have to have a Zoom account. They're free. And you do have to register with that email. Because we've had people, the same thing with Orange, we had a lot of people come in and they would film or do something over Zoom and then they would edit it and they would put it out there on social media and disparage people. They would also take screenshots of people and then try and get other people to go out and find them and then shout at them and attack them. Go ahead and go on to, let's go on the next one. So some topics, if you're wondering what we've done is, we'd like to inform. We're educators. So we've had people come and present on book banning. What are the laws around it if it's happening where you're at? What are LGBTQ rights? What is CRT that they're talking about versus ethnic studies? The role of school board members. What's their actual role? How to find public information requests and to get them through. And we did hate crimes in Orange County Public Schools so that you could see just how bad it is in terms of what's reported, and a bunch more things. As we move to take, right before we move to take questions, our website is soapoc.org. I apologize earlier. I handle the website stuff, and we have all the domains just in case someone tries to sneak one. And I was just working on it today, and I see all the lists that we pay for. But we actually use soapoc.org. Don't worry about that being small writing. That's just the first page when you go to it. So if you're like, dang, for teachers, they put a lot on there. Don't worry. That's just what's on the first page. But again, when you go there, you're going to see up at the top right-hand corner the presentation. And what we've included there is when I gave you that history, there's actually each one's 3 or 4 pages of a document. So each heading actually has paragraphs underneath it if you want to know more about that era. The other thing is that a lot of you said that you know about Project 2025, but it's a thick document. I believe the education area is about 47 pages just by itself. So we have links to Our Schools USA, and they do a podcast. And so on there's going to be a link to the Project 2025, all the different issues. So if you want to look at some other issue other than public education, you can do that. But if you want to go straight to the public education area, there's that link. Then there's a link to the podcast. They did a 5-episode series where they break it down and they explain what the plan is with education, and then they reference the pages for you to go back to be able to read. In case you talk to family and friends and they're like, you're making that up. That's not really the plan. And then I'll turn it over to our chair to close us out with just a thank you, the last slide.
There was something I was going to say. No, it just went right in my head. Okay, we don't have time. So thank you again for having us. I'm sorry that we had to seem sort of rushed, but there's so much more that we could be telling you, and we're just trying to give you the important information. One of the reasons we have guest speakers at SOAP OC is that there are so many lies that are being told about schools, and I'm just going to call them out as lies. And it's not enough to sit there and say, no, they're not giving puberty blockers to kindergartners. You have to give them the information of well, what does it take to give medicine to a child in elementary school? And how is that? You have to have the definitive answer of what does happen. And so that's why we bring in experts from all over the place. Our contacts with CTA are very, very helpful, and our party experts are helpful too. So, and we have school board members and superintendents and teachers and parents and students and community members and activists all in our club because they're all people who just care and understand the importance of public education is necessary for democracy, period. Thank you.
Teri and Billie, really, another huge round of applause.